All right, to be 100% honest with you, I'm actually a little nervous to record this episode right now. And I'm nervous about it because I think it's possible that what I'm about to say is so laughably behind the times of our space that it is mockable, that I'm going to receive feedback about this, about how dumb I am being. But I've decided to record it anyway because I think a lot of folks are in the same place as I am, which is that they believe in some way or another that AI is going to help their business, specifically their meta ads creative and sort of output in their D2C business, making that meaningfully cheaper. They're exploring it with some seriousness, and yet they're still pretty early and they're gauging reactions and learning how to use it. So what I want to do basically for this time is give you my sense at this stage of things as we have begun to try to incorporate more AI into AJF growth process with our clients, how I am thinking about this right now. And this is going to range from some really extremely tactical things and practical stuff to more reflections about where things are at, and hopefully that is both helpful to you. I'll just give you some basic sense of my relationship to AI. And this is really important to say out front. I actually have almost no belief or perspective yet on whether or not I think AI will make you tons more money in your brand, at least at the level of outputting high performing creative. I'm going to get to that more later. But I've had some conversations recently, including a bit of a conversation with Taylor Holiday a few episodes ago in my episode with him, which I will link in the show notes. And the conversation we're having there is sort of Taylor saying, look, I'm going to be able to output hundreds of ads, thousands of ads so fast with AI that it doesn't really matter if you're better at making an individual ad or not. Taylor doubts sort of that anybody is good at making meta ads, that anybody has that skill. I don't doubt that. I think some people definitely are better at it than others. But his point is, if you can make it cheap enough and you can take enough swings, you just have enough volume, like it just won't matter if somebody's better at it because you can just win on quantity. And I understand that. And so I'm withholding judgment about that right now. I don't have much perspective on the answer to that question yet. I think that's possible. I think the world Taylor is describing is possible, though I actually, as of now, have not yet seen it. I'm not sure Taylor has. I think it's possible he has. If he has, he hasn't said it quite like that publicly yet, though they're clearly putting resources into it at CGC. So that's not really the point of this. I'm going to withhold that a little bit because it is possible that AI right now with I think you probably have to be good at it at this point. You have to use the tool well. Can output so much creative so quickly at a good enough quality that you can just sort of you can sort of bully an ad account into performing. You could bully your creative into performing. You could bully your brand into performing. And that again seems possible to me. But I haven't seen anybody quite do that exactly. And so I'm going to instead of saying, here's exactly how I'm doing that at massive scale or whatever, I'm instead going to highlight for you a couple things that as I have begun the process with a couple clients who are really engaging deeply with AI in some really different ways from one another, which is really helpful for me to see. We've spent a lot of the last couple of weeks really trying to dig into different tools, different processes. I'm going to tell you kind of where I'm at with it right now, with the good, the bad, and then one neutral observation that I think is sort of a no-brainer, okay? And I'm going to give you a specific emphasis here on the process of writing ads, of generating ads that perform. Again, with actually not too much perspective on whether or not it will in fact perform, but more about sort of the process around that. I think you'll see what I mean in a second. But like I said, I think many people are in the same place as me, trying to adopt it. It's still relatively early in the AI game. All of these tools, of course, will get better over more time, but just where they are. And part of the reason I'm recording this is because I believe a lot of people are in my place, but also because I actually wanted a sort of time-stamped thing that I could come back to at some point to reference, like, what was this like in August when I'm recording this of 2024? And what was my relationship to this at that point versus what is that going to be like a year from now? And so I may come back to this topic a few times. It's clearly one of the biggest issues in our space as people can adopt it and begin to make use of these tools. So, so how is that working? Okay, so let me start with things that I think are definitely good. And again, I'm going to emphasize here specifically that a lot of the AI tools I'm using are, things like Claude for writing ads. Okay, and I'm not going to go link all of these things that I reference here. You're just going to have to go find them all yourself. I'll try to mention the name as much as possible, but I'm going to reference a lot of tools here. So a lot of this is coming back to Claude for writing ads. Could I give Claude great instructions to output for me really high quality scripts, headlines, still image copy, all of that kind of stuff, so that I could speed up my process of getting ads created and make that faster and cheaper and better and better, all those things. Okay, so let's start with the good. Okay, number one, overwhelmingly, I think the thing that was the most surprising to me, the most surprisingly good thing about this that has been really helpful to me, has been that Claude, by working hard, spending hours training an LLM to write ads for me, is forcing me to get clear about my thinking about things. It is forcing me to break down ideas that I have about what makes good creative into their component parts. And in fact, it's not just forcing me to do that, it's helping me to do that. So here's an example, right? So I gave Claude a few ads that had won at one point for one of my clients. And when I gave Claude those ads, I said, okay, analyze these ads and tell me which ones. Analyze these ads and tell me what you can learn from them. Okay. And so, of course, Claude did, and it spat out all this information about like the way that I had constructed these ads. Now, I wasn't too surprised by this. I knew when I was writing those ads that they fit a basic format, in this case, of the long form explainer. And again, I'll link an episode I did explaining the long form explainer at one point. Okay. And in fact, there's two of them that I did. One's where I explained it, and then another one where I actually worked through this with Dave Recook from Bamboo Earth, where we tried to actually write an ad together. Those ads, by the way, people have asked me about those. They spent a little bit, didn't perform awesome or anything like that. I think they suggested some promise, but nothing incredible. Okay, so I have this concept, the long form explainer, and really the explainer is the key word. I don't really care that it's long. I just started calling it that at one point. I just care that you work through information. This is a crucial idea here, right? I'm writing direct response ads. In fact, it's worth noting here that if LLMs for writing are going to help anybody write ads, it's going to be me and the style of ads that I write. I've said this a lot of times before, but I do not make ads that are particularly creative. They don't work around ideas in roundabout ways. Like my ads, as I've said before, like one of my favorite ad hooks is, this is product from brand and this is why it's good. So just insert your product name, insert your brand name, and then the next line is why it's good. That ad works. And it's incredibly clear and direct. And this is my best skill in writing. It's trying to be clear and trying to sort of teach things when I write, right? So, in that respect, because I'm not doing things that are super creative, I don't need an LLM to write truly creative scripts for me, where you're actually coming up with sort of net new approaches and ideas to things. What I'm trying to do instead is just take different angles with different kinds of customers and different kinds of products and do it as much scale as possible across as many products as possible, and find ways to approach the same product in multiple ways, and then do it in still images as well, add landing pages where necessary, etc., and use clarity and simple tools like problem solution and generating curiosity and all those to write ads. And that's the kind of thing where the sorts of thinking that comprise my ad approach actually are sort of repeatable in an obvious way. And what the LLM, what Claude does is it feeds that back to me. And so I give Claude examples. Say, here's some winner ads. And then I say, tell me why these won. Tell me what's good about these, basically, And then I give it my breakdown of, hook, and then body/education section, 4 sections of an explainer ad: hook, body, validation, usually also with a guarantee, and then an offer and CTA. Okay, those are the 4 sections that I typically put into any ad. I also gave Claude that. I told it, here's the 4 sections of the ad, gave it that information, and then said, do these ads follow this format? And it said, yeah, basically it does. Here's the differences between what you said you were trying to do versus what you actually did in these ads, but etc. And then I said, okay, Claude, go write me 5 more hooks, 10 more hooks, 20 more hooks, whatever, for these ads based on the information that you have. And of course, gave it a bunch of information about the brand and all that. And it did. And then I selected, of those 20 hooks, the 5 that I thought were good. And then I modified them slightly, added 1 or 2 of my own, gave those back to Claude and said, okay, what do you notice about what I picked? And when it fed those back to me, like one of the things it said back to me was the hooks you like invoke curiosity. That is, I mean, without me telling Claude that, right? That is actively something that I'm trying to do in my hook writing. I have thought about those terms. I've talked about it with clients. I've talked about it with my team. How do you, in a hook, get the right person to be curious? And Claude gathered that I was trying to do that, fed me back that exact language, and clarified that for me. It also noticed that I liked active verbs, and it noticed that I liked being direct and clear and not talking around the point. It noticed that I don't like overpromising, actually. And I don't. I think overpromising often sounds too much like marketing speak. And so when you overpromise too much, you sort of lose credibility. And I'm very concerned about credibility and authenticity in an ad. And so in all these ways, as I was giving information to Claude, both working with it and telling it what I liked and didn't like, and then asking it to then summarize all that stuff back to me, right? It was telling me these things. And that was extremely helpful to me because one of the really hard things about thinking and about writing is getting clear. And as I'm trying to create and prepare instructions for myself and even for my team about like, how do we do a better job of writing better ads more often? I was actually struggling with this with a coaching client of mine. I've actually since shut down my coaching business because of this. Like I realized I have got to get clearer on the kinds of things that I'm producing, turn it into more tangible instructions. Otherwise, I just kind of talk at people, trying to explain to them an idea that's in my head. And Claude really helped me to do that because the process of training an LLM to give you the information or to do what you want it to do requires you to get extremely clear and direct and precise in your instructions. And of course, again, it will help you to do that, right? But as it does, that's good. So for me, it really helped my thinking about those things a lot. And I think that's one way I will continue to use it is for it to analyze for me stuff that is winning. And especially if I give it a bunch of ads that all are winning ads, like, can it tell me more about why those ads are winning? And then maybe I can use that to source new ideas, et cetera. Okay. So in that respect, it's a real aid for me. So that's number one, forces me to get clear about my thinking on things. I really like that. It's really hard work, I think, to do that. And so it does feel really good. I've been using the analogy a lot recently when talking about AI, that AI is like a hammer. It's a tool. It creates leverage when you swing a hammer, but there are real differences in people who are good and bad at swinging hammers. And so you got to get good at swinging a hammer. If you've ever been around somebody who like has worked construction for any meaningful amount of time, they just hit a nail directly on the center a lot harder than I do as somebody who doesn't do a lot of construction, right? It takes me a few pounds of a nail and I hit my hand 4 times. And somebody who is working construction gets a nail where it needs to go in one swing every time with a good hammer, right? Like they're just good at it. They're trained at it. That I think is basically the way something like AI or like most AI tools are going to work. You get better at swinging them, you get better at using them, and this is one of those cases where I think it's just really clearly a leverage creation tool on my thinking, where it's a thinking tool, the same way a hammer is like a force tool, right? It is time to upgrade the data tracking that you are doing from your Meta Ads account into your Shopify store. And you should do that with BILY, BILY.ai. BILY's been a sponsor on this show for a little while now because I use them for 100% server-side tracking with all of my clients. I've just switched my most recent client over to BILY because they're great. It is so simple, and over and over and over again, what I see is the same with BILY. It has the highest event match quality scores in Meta Event Manager, and it is a much more cost-effective option than everything else on the market. If you're using other third-party solutions for conversions API, server-side tracking, you should really consider switching to BILY. It is an incredible tool, and actually you can use it for like install with basically one click for not just Meta ads, but for Google ads, GA4. One click installation for GA4 is amazing. GA4 is a mess for installation. So you can get that there, including enhanced conversions for Google ads, TikTok ads, X ads, all of it. Like within a couple clicks, it's extremely easy, extremely smooth. Go to BILY.ai today to get better quality event matching, and you can actually start it, test it on your store for $1 for the first month. So go check it out right now, BILY.ai, to get better quality data sent back from your store to Meta. That's going to give you a cleaner dashboard with better information. It's also going to give Meta more information and more data so that it can optimize your ads better. That's what I've seen over and over from my accounts. You should do it too. Number 2, I think you can use AI to generate MVP versions of ads really, really quickly. And that is something that I really like. So far, I have found that the video creation tools that take my script and turn it into a video are not great. They are clunky. They have some real values, but there's just these things that are missing from them that make them sort of annoying to work with. All right, so I'm thinking specifically of Creatify and InVideo. I've used both of those tools probably the most, and both of them at times are great. Creatify can take a bunch of video really fast and put it all together into an ad for you. And if you want, you can use an AI avatar, and that can work. And all that. But like also the captions are kind of a giant mess. It's really hard to create sort of a bunch of hook variations. I would really like it if it could do more variations of copy faster, but it's sort of one video at a time. You can batch create sort of avatar variations, but not necessarily like actually changing the text and changing the script. And that's annoying. The VO still sounds like something weird. I remember the first AI ad I made, I sent to a bunch of friends and asked them for feedback. I didn't tell them it was AI. And almost all of them said, man, yeah, that girl like is weird. Like she looks kind of weird, seems weird. None of them knew that it was AI. I mean, it looked realistic enough that it fooled them, but they were like, why did she talk to the camera like that? So there's still some elements of those kinds of things. Now, that ad performed actually when I made it. And so it can work really, really well. But most importantly, it allowed me to go from explainer script in particular to created video very fast, notwithstanding the clunkiness. And this is where I think the tools will get better. And by very fast, I mean within a few hours. Like, so it still took me some time to make one ad, right? But it still took way less time than doing that same thing. And having somebody go record a script for me and, generating an edit where I had to go send it to my team who was going to go create an edit and use the green screen effect and like select video individually to use B-roll with it and all those kinds of things. Like it just grabbed a bunch of B-roll, put it together, gave me a voiceover, gave me captions, etc. The captions were a mess. The captions were an absolute mess for that particular tool. But it worked. It worked pretty fast. In video, I found the edits look pretty slick. They're cool. The editor itself is really cool, except it's also hard to make a lot of them fast for a couple of reasons. And every video comes a little different. In this case, there's no avatar. So if that matters to you, it's different. Like there's just like all of these little sort of limitations, but all told, net of everything, I was able to move from idea. In this case, I think I wrote the script myself. I was able to move from idea to created video in an ad account much faster than I normally would, particularly with this explainer style. In that respect, what the tool did is what I think is possibly the most promising thing about the tool, about AI for ads, which is essentially the production costs, like eliminating or drastically reducing the production costs. And I think these will get a lot better. Like the idea of, and I don't think it's going to replace humans, by the way. I think my human editors are just going to be able to work better and faster because they'll be able to just work with, small edits of, maybe an AI tool gets it 80% of the way there. A human fixes the last 20% and then handles the variations really quick. That kind of thing, right? We're playing with final versions of this, and it might not be using the same video B-roll selection tool with using the VO, the AI script and the AI voiceover from the same tool. Maybe it's AI voiceover from tool A, B-roll selection tool from tool B, etc. And you put them together and then create variations, something like that, right? But either way, man, one of the big bottlenecks we have had at AJF Growth is that we like these explainer ads, but then we need somebody to go film it. We need somebody to go film the ads, and it takes them forever. And if it's the founder, they're annoyed. They got so much stuff to do. And yet I believe these ads work, right? Like over and over, they are high performing ads in our ad accounts. And it's because of all the things I've said, I think you can hook really, really well with them. You can speak directly to the right customer. You can give people all the information they need to go from never having heard of you to pulling out their wallet really fast. And so in that respect, being able to generate those ads fast does really meaningfully, I think, shorten the production time. And what I wonder about is if that becomes a new way of using the tool to where you start doing that, and then you get an ad that the messaging works, and you go and say, hey, we think this would work even better if we got an actor or if we got the founder to record it or we got somebody to whitelist it or whatever, whatever the thing is that works. So yeah, MVP versions of the ads going really, really fast is really helpful. Okay. That's number 2 for me. And it just really, again, a lot cheaper, etc. If the tools get a little bit better, I think that could be a crazy advantage. Okay. Number three, there is some kind of work that you just want to do fast, particularly writing work. So I'm coming back here to Claude and to AI tools for writing here. One of sort of my most effective, one of the most effective uses of AI that I've seen is from a client of mine who is I'm going to maybe try and interview him here at some point. He's a master of using AI to write information-rich content. His brand does it for emails. His brand does it for landing pages, sometimes for long-form explainer ads. Sometimes, though, those have not necessarily worked quite as well yet. And so he's just producing mass amounts of stuff. And that has meant that at times, there are times when you want a lot of information presented in a clear enough way, but you do not want to sit and write it all out yourself. And so, for example, that is a client who is using Format. I've mentioned Format as a newer sponsor of mine. And that client is using Format and pumping out landing pages at a speed that even the Format people are going like, this is extremely fast. And it's because he's gotten so good with using Claude to turn insights and past work into longer landing pages. And now when you pair that with a tool like Format, where the ability to turn out landers from that with amazing software, really good measurement, and a person guiding that process, you can get a lot of landing pages done quickly and create these really tight, really well done funnels. At that point, I'm not sure every word of the landing page matters so much as it is that the customer gets all the right information. You've already hooked them, right? You've already gotten the hook done on email. Now, I will also tell you that so far as I can tell, when well, I'm going to come back to that. So yeah, there's a kind of writing that repetitive writing tasks where the information does matter, but it isn't actually so important that you sort of get the ad style quite right. It is unbelievable as a tool for that. You can get so much work done so fast and get stuff in front of your customers so easily, especially again, if you have a brand that requires a whole bunch of information relative to your products. I think it's a sort of a life-changing tool for that. I have not really used AI. This is sort of a broader thing for any of my written content, like newsletter, tweets, that kind of stuff. I'm starting to explore that though, because there are some kinds of writing tasks that I think could be sort of repetitive, where I've already done the hard work of generating the content that is important, and the AI tools could just help me spin that out and speed it up in terms of making it more easy to disseminate, quicker to disseminate to more people. Okay. So in that respect, there's certain kinds of writing where that's the case. So let me tell you what I paused on a second ago as a transition to the bad. Okay. Here's the problem that I see so far. I don't think most advertising is the kind of writing that I just described. And this is my sort of hang up on where I'm not sure if AI is going to, like, quote unquote, work at the scale that some people think it will. So far, I have not really gotten Claude to be able to write great ads for me. And in fact, here's the point I was going to make a second ago. Even on those landing pages, now this is like a perfect example of the thing that Taylor has talked about. The speed at which we could generate lots of them is really helpful. And on the other hand, because we could generate lots of them, right? So it's really helped us a lot. On the other hand, when I have gone and rewritten personally with like actually zero AI, very much on purpose, I did this exercise where I took one of our landing pages and I took the same angle and the same kind of set of knowledge about the product and the benefits, and I rewrote it without any AI at all. At least this is an N of one. Okay. So this is not going to, again, please hear me say, I'm withholding judgment at this point on whether or not, I can outright AI for performance or something like that. I really am withholding judgment, but at least in that case, my lander beat Claude's. Okay. And so that might be the way to do it. You use Claude for massive amounts of speed, and then you go and say, okay, I have a specific idea that this triggered that I'm going to go work on as well. And you try to find different spaces where you think you can create more leverage with quality. One of the things I did there was I looked for a lander that was getting a lot of traffic. It was a lander connected to an ad that was spending a lot of money. And so that way I could test it pretty fast. I wasn't going to go individually write a lander for an ad that I wasn't even sure was going to spend yet. So again, that's where something like Claude was really helpful. You could very quickly write landers that moved really fast, where an ad, you're not actually sure if the ad is even going to spend, but there's no real time cost to going and generating the landers to go with them, where you worry that you're going to generate all this content and it's never going to get any traffic because it didn't take that long. It was really fast and really easy. Okay, so so that's kind of the trade-off. Now, when you take that another step, right? I actually think in this respect, a landing page is different than an ad because, crucially, somebody who has made it to the landing page is somebody's attention you've already gotten. And so you don't need to hook them. You don't need, I mean, the angle matters, but maybe the precision of the language doesn't matter quite as much. And what I sort of think right now is that the act of writing ads requires a kind of thoughtfulness about who your customer is, what your product is, how it intersects with their life, to where messaging is the thing that matters. And that work, the work of actually honing in on an angle that is really, really effective for advertising, so far, I have not gotten to work for ads because I think there's a kind of thinking and essentially like mental gear grinding that has to happen for somebody thinking carefully about the way their brand interacts with their customer. That I just I'm not sure that is the kind of repetitive writing task that maybe Claude is great at yet. I'm just not sure it is. And so this moves me to what so far for me has been the bad or the frustrating part of working with AI to create more ads. Okay, here's what I think the bad is. All right. Number one, overwhelmingly, okay, as I think about using AI for specifically for ad creation, for writing ads, I think AI short circuits my thinking in ways that are probably net negative for me. When you were in math class in high school and in junior high, do you remember they gave you the answers in the back of the book? They gave you the answers in the back of the book because, and you're supposed to check your own work before you even turn it in, right? Because the point of the math problem was not actually for you to get the right answer. That's actually just the end of the math problem. And you could turn in your homework with the answer there, correct. And and it wasn't necessarily right. It wasn't necessarily the correct thing. Why? Because the point of the math problem was to get you to show your work. And not even just to show your work, but to actually do the work of math. You needed to sit down and think through how to actually get from problem to solution and all the steps in the middle of that, because it is the thinking itself that generates the outcome that you want. It actually generates your ability to do math. And when I think about what makes a great brand, what makes a great ad, what makes great performance marketing, all those things, I think there's a kind of thinking required that requires you to do the math. And my experience with Claude so far, trying to sort of skip that step and just say, I'm just going to let the LLM do the math for me, so far has not been a good use of the tool for me. It is consistently missed in ways that are like, you read it and go, that's not quite right, and you can tool it, whatever. Now, there are parts of that process you might use it for. Just like in that math problem, you might have at some point to multiply two large numbers together, and you realize these are the two numbers you have to multiply together because you solved the quadratic equation, and I don't even remember. I don't remember all the algebra and algebra 2 terms here, right? But you solved part of the math problem, and it gave you two numbers, and you had to multiply them together. And so, what do? You take out your calculator and you quickly punch in 56 times 43 or whatever, and that way you don't have to sit there and pencil out the math, because actually you had already learned how to do 56 times 43 penciling out the math a few years before you ever got to that algebra equation. Now it's okay for you to take out the calculator and just have it do that, right? There's something like that going on with LLMs, and I think there's a thing here where it's possibly the case that, like, for the validation section of my ad, for the guarantee section of my ad, for the offer section, CTA, I could just have Claude spin that stuff up and write it really, really fast and punch it in there, because I've already done that multiplication. I don't need to go do that again. That's not the point. That's really hard. I can have an LLM repetitively write, and if you act now, you get 40% off. Tap the link to learn more. Like, that's fine. Okay. So that's not the point. But I think it matters that you sit there and pour through reviews yourself. Right? Like, look, I know I've done it. I know you can export all your reviews and you can have Claude give you a sentiment analysis of those reviews. I know you can do that. But you do lose something there. you lose the time. I mean, you lose the mental thinking about, wait a minute, what is this person really saying about the emotional resonance that their product has in their life? Why did this customer take the extra 3 minutes out of their life and write 5 stars? What possessed them to do that? What was it about this product? They had an expectation when they bought the product. They received the product and they got 5 stars. So why? What did that say about them and who they are? And how do I then think about how to communicate that same thing to the next person? That work matters. And I believe so much marketing, performance marketing, goes wrong because people are trying to speed that up too much. Like I see this over and over. They're just trying to say, my product is great, buy it. And look, maybe if you do that at enough scale, fast enough, and you seed enough influencers, etc., then you can do that. Okay. And this is part of where influencers and creators can be really useful because they're actually going to do that for you. And then you can use their video and go. They're going to be the ones to articulate, I bought this product, or they sent me this product and it did this, it did X, Y, and Z for me. And now you don't have to be the one to do it. But if you are the one creating ad creative, okay, if you are the one doing that and you're writing an ad from scratch, it is, and by the way, this is part of what people like about seeding and influencers, right? It's like a cheap way to generate a lot of content really, really fast that performs because people do exactly that. Okay. But if there's some part of your ad account that is requiring you to explain the value proposition in still image and video form, whatever, with words at some point, and the words are the thing that matters. I believe the words drive the value. The words express the ideas expresses the messaging is what resonates and what sells products. Okay. And so if you are doing that, like spending the time reading the reviews, I think makes a really big difference. And then taking that and going the next step and thinking through, how do I express this point as clearly as possible? What creative language can I use? What direct language can I use? How do I agitate the problem for people so they see what they're missing out on, or whatever? How do I invoke their curiosity? Now, again, Claude as a thought starter for some of those things can work, and as a clever language creator can work. Totally can. But if you use it to try to write the whole thing, I think it's just not so far that useful. Writing is an act of thinking. You may have heard me say this before, and I didn't make this up. I picked it up from a guy named John Piper. John Piper's a pastor and a theologian, a Christian pastor. I'm a Christian person, and so he's a guy who's writing and stuff I pay attention to. John Piper has written a whole bunch of books, and when asked why he's written so many books, he says, even though plenty of them don't sell very many copies, he says, among other things, because writing is how he thinks. And he cares about the thought. He cares about the thinking. And so writing is laborious work, but it forces him to be precise in his thinking and his language as he tries to explain an idea. In the process of trying to do the math of explaining the idea, he's figuring out where he's getting stuck and where he has to rethink. I don't have clarity enough there. Right? This is sort of exactly what I liked about using Claude for what I was saying earlier, like where it can actually help you feedback at times where I was getting stuck in my sort of SOPs, right? At that level, where I'm just a lot worse at it. At the same time, I think it's possible that I will come back to this video in 6 months and say, actually, using Claude to make my SOPs had some benefits, but it also did the math for me too fast, and I need to do the math. And that actually is going to help me clarify my thinking at the level of SOPs. Okay, so that is, to me, drawback number one that I've experienced so far. It just has taken the act of thinking out of parts of it, which I think is actually a net negative in the kind of work that I'm doing. Okay, number two, so far, at least for parts of the work, particularly on the writing side, which sometimes is laborious, let's be clear, I hate it. I just hate it. It feels joyless. It turns a creative, problem-solving, interesting job and problem and thought process into factory work. That's probably something worth me saying as a bias in this. Maybe that is stopping me from using the tool the way that I want to. I dragged my feet into AI a little bit, which is why you're getting this podcast now and not 6 months ago. But I also think this is a real thing. I finished work yesterday after spending a lot of the day, if not most of the day, working through AI stuff. And I went like, where did the day go? What did I do today? I spent all day prompting something. Do I actually like this at all? I just am not sure that that's not really bad, at least for me today. Yeah, again, there's a place for it. I'm not not a Luddite here. Like, I don't think we can't use the tool at all or anything, but I just hated it. And I'm just putting my finger on that, noting it, and saying that for whatever it's worth. I don't really have any further thoughts on that. It's just that it was a joyless experience to me. I guess maybe the other thought is the struggle of work is part of what makes work worth doing. And if in some way, and again, it didn't actually ease the struggle for me that much, per my point a little bit ago. I didn't actually produce an outcome that worked, but that's, again, not really the point of this podcast. The struggle of the work, I think, is the thing. Yeah, it's part of the joy of the work. The struggle is part of the joy, and it was joyless to me. Okay. All right. One final observation, then we're done. Final observation is this. Whatever else there is to say, there is a speeding up of asset creation and asset production that is happening right now. And whether that is through offshore labor or AI or a combination of those things, it is happening all the time. People are producing more creative all the time. And while I am not a quantity over quality only guy, I think there's a place for taking the time for quality specifically. I do also think that even when you focus on quality, you should also think about quantity, and sort of like the last episode that I put out just before this one about what parts of the process are expensive and cheap, etc. Either way, there is a huge volume of asset production that is going to happen, of ad production is going to happen, and I suspect that's only going to increase. And when that does, as it does, I'm just telling you, if you have not switched your Meta ad account to manual bids, it is no longer going to be viable to creative test the way that other people have been doing it so far, and not very long. This is another thing that has occurred to me, and I've thought about a lot. Broader reflection outside the realm of the main AI thing. It might even sound ridiculous attaching it to this episode, but hear me out. Like, it just is the case that if you are testing creative by having to force spend to it, if the creative 10x's, it is going to be financially impossible for you to do that. So this just thought has been occurring to me as I've been working on this. The reality is you are going to have to use it. Or excuse me, you're going to have to run some kind of different approach to your creative testing, because we are moving towards a world where assets get way, way cheaper, way faster. And so, so being able to run that at massive scale without the risk of the cost of lots of bad money spent on underperforming ads, it's just, you're going to need to do it. You need to embrace it and learn how to do it. All right, enough on the media buying thing. That's not really the point of this episode, just an attached observation that I think is important to notice. Okay, that is it. That is it for this episode. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Make fun of me if you want. Email me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com. Call me out publicly. Make fun of me publicly on Twitter @AndrewJFerris for how poor my understanding of this of these tools are. But that is it for today. Don't forget to go follow up with my friends at BILY, BILY.ai, who are the sponsors on this episode. They are awesome. Go check out what they are doing to get 100% server-side tracking really fast. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you are watching or listening to this. Thanks so much. Can't wait to hear from you.